for love covers a multiple of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaining. Like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received.
Thank you. And you know we're in a series on being grateful and gratitude and showing our gratitude, as I've already said. And I'm really excited. And we are blessed to have Debbie Kreckler here with us today, who's returned from a mission trip and is going to share that experience with you. And you're in for a real treat. That's one way that we can show our gratitude, huh? By serving and remembering that others are in need. What a great way to do it. So Debbie, I invite you to come forward and share your experience with us. Many of you know her, so welcome her.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be here. It's always great to come back and see everyone here. Thanks for having me here. I want to share a little bit today about my trip that I went on back in January to Nicaragua. And you guys were very instrumental in helping me go on this trip through your generosity with the Mission Scholarship. So thank you for that. So I did go to Nicaragua back in January. It was a medical mission trip. On the front cover here, or the slide right before was a little girl, and her name is Junta, and I like to share her story. She was a little girl that was at the clinic where we were at. We were at a school, and her mother was the cleaning lady at the school. So once our clinic was closed for the day and everyone had left, this little girl was still hanging around, and she would follow us around, and we called her our little parrot because we would try to teach her some phrases in English. Simple phrases like good morning, how are you, good afternoon, hello. And so she'd be running around shouting like good morning, it'd be like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she's like good morning, and she didn't know what she was saying, but she was adorable. She would be following us around, and she just had so much energy and so much joy. So I like sharing her story. But now we can go to the next slide. I went to Nicaragua with an organization called GHO, or Global Health Outreach. And this is an organization that's based in the United States, but they send mission teams all over the world. They send a lot of teams to Central America and South America, but they also have teams that go out to Asia, like Southeast Asia and Africa. Recently, they're sending teams out to Europe, especially Greece, to help with some of the refugees that are coming in there. So they're at some of the refugee camps in that area of the world. So we went with this organization, and they partner with another organization called Christian Medical and Dental, and that's a professional organization that works with medical professionals who have a Christian-based faith, and they provide support for those people. And so these two organizations partner together to send these medical teams out throughout the world. So now we go to the next slide. This is a sampling of some of our team members that went. There was a team of, I'd say about 18 of us, and a lot of different variety of people who went. In terms of medical professionals, I am a physical therapist by trade, and so I went in that capacity. I went with a friend of mine from PT school, and we went together. There were also physicians, physician assistants, nurses, pharmacists, and we had a lot of dentists as well. So just running the whole gamut of that medical profession. This is a Christian-based organization, so we had some pastors go on the trip as well and was involved with that aspect of the trip. And we had a couple of other people. They're just called logistics people. They don't necessarily have a medical trade, but they're there to help out in whatever capacity that is needed. Age-wise, we had a couple of teenagers, and these were fantastic teenagers. They're very mature and so helpful and such a crucial part of our team. And then we had one gentleman who was probably in his early 70s, so it was just a very diverse group of medical professionals and age ranges, and from all over the country, from the west to the Midwest to the south. We had 2 Canadians on a trip, and we all just melded in together to form this team. We each brought our own gifts and areas of expertise, and we worked together to really form this cohesive team that worked really well together. We have one more slide of just showing a couple of the other people on the trip. This happens to be in one of the small airports that we were waiting in. But move on to the next slide again. So in preparation for this trip, we were able to collect some medical supplies to bring down. So a lot of the pharmacists and the physicians, they would collect medications and bring those down. The dentists were bringing all of their supplies that they needed to do their job. So for physical therapy, we were bringing all the tools of our trade. So we were bringing a lot of braces and assistive devices. So you can see we have a couple of, we were able to bring down a couple of walkers and a couple of canes and a suitcase full of other supplies. During the course of the week there, we were able to give out most of our supplies. There were a couple that we didn't give out, but we were able to leave them there for future uses. A fun challenge was going through LaGuardia Airport with these and checking them at our arrival gate. There was some confusion, but we managed to figure it out, and everything got to Nicaragua safely. So we'll take a look at the next slide. When we got there, we flew into the main capital city, but that's not where we were. Our team leader leads many trips throughout the year, and his specialty, his desire is to go to like the most remote place possible. And so that's where we went. So we flew into the capital city, and then we had to get on these tiny little hopper planes, and they were tiny. You can see the top picture is a picture of the cockpit taken from the seat that I was sitting in. And there's some of us in the other picture of like how small the plane is. So that was an adventure. It took 3 planes to get us out to the small town where we were. So the picture on the left-hand side, you can even see is the runway for where the town that we landed in. That runway also happened to be Main Street of that town. So it's clearing off the dirt bikes and everything of the runway before we could land. Once we landed, we were in a town called Sunia, and that is where we stayed. That was where our hotel was, but that's not where we had a clinic. Every day, you can actually flip to the next slide, every day we would hop onto a yellow school bus, and we would ride out to the town, and it was an hour and a half to a 2-hour ride on this bus to this town. And so this town, like I said, middle of nowhere, they really have no access to medical care. And so we were the only medical care they were going to see. The closest medical facility to them was the town that we were staying at. So again, an hour and a half to a 2-hour drive, and that's if you had a car. Most people there don't have cars, they're walking or they're riding horses. So we really were like their medical care. It was always an interesting ride to get out there. It's this dirt road, very bumpy. Road condition varied. If it rained the night before, the potholes were worse, and it took us that much longer to get there. It made for an interesting trip because we were always on the road. We were always on that school bus to get to that town, but it was exhausting, but it was so important because, again, these people just otherwise don't get that medical care. So we'll flip to the next slide. These are just a couple of pictures on the road. So you can see as we were on that bus, the scenery was beautiful, and then you can see we got to drive through a couple of small towns, and that's what some of the towns would look like. So again, next slide. When we got to our clinic, this is what we saw. Our clinic was held in one of the schools that happened to be closed that week, so the school opened up for us to be there. And I went with a friend of mine from PT school, like I said, and we didn't know what to expect at all. We were just expecting like this empty room. So we were pleased when we got there. On the right-hand side of the picture there, you can see there's a room with 2 tables set up. And that's one of the main tools of the trade for physical therapy. And so we were thrilled to have those tables there. It was a great surprise when we got there. So we were able to use those. Take a look at the next slide. So when we got there on the first day of the clinic, this is what we saw. The bus pulled up and there were just masses and masses of people. You got off, and as you got off the bus, you had to weave through all these people to get through, but they were more than happy to let us through because they knew it was coming. But there were just so many people there. And the picture on the right you can see is more people inside the clinic, waiting in line at the pharmacy counter to receive some medications. But just we had clinic for 4 days, so every day we would arrive and we would see this many people waiting for us. So not only were we serving the little town where we were at, there are a couple surrounding towns where people would come and travel to get that medical care. Next slide. So we treated a lot of different people, a lot of different conditions, but the main thing that we did was we worked with people who were coming with complaints of back pain and neck pain. These people live very hard physical lives. The men there are often either farmers or they live in a mining community, so they're working in the mines, so very labor-intensive, physically demanding jobs. The women are often in the homes, doing the laundry and the cooking, heavy pots, taking care of the children. Again, just very physically demanding jobs. And the way just mechanically your body works can often cause back and neck pain. And so these people are fighting and working through this pain as they're doing their work. So about 90% of the people we treated were back and neck pain. We, if you're in the States and you have back or neck pain, many people do, you go to PT and you can, for a couple of months, you're seeing a PT 2 or 3 times a week. We did not have this luxury here, so we had to work with these people in about a 10-minute time span. So in that 10 minutes, we could give them a couple of exercises, but a lot of it was education. We were educating people on how to change their lifestyle, how to change their body, or how they move their body as they're working to help prevent more pain in the future and to heal the pain that they already have. This was challenging because the language they speak there is Spanish. I do not speak Spanish at all, but we had some fantastic interpreters that worked with us. Each of us had our own individual interpreter, and so we were able to really be able to communicate what we were trying to share with these people here. We'll look at the next slide. This is a little girl, and she has a neurological condition. This was something that she was born with and something that she's been living with for her entire life. She's probably about 12 years old, 10 or 12 years old, and within that span of her lifetime, she had only really been to a hospital and received medical care one time. And if you have a condition like this here in the States, I mean, you're constantly being followed by so many medical professionals, and she just does not have any access to this at all. So her mom was really doing the best that she could, but she needed some help. This was one of the main reasons why they came here, was that they were actually looking for a wheelchair, because mom had been carrying her daughter around everywhere. Daughter can't walk, so mom has been carrying her around all over the place for her entire life, which is fine when, the daughter is 5 years old and is only yay big. But as she starts to grow, and this is where she's at, she's about 12 years old, and starting to get really demanded on mom to carry her around. So they were really looking for a wheelchair. Unfortunately, we did not have a wheelchair to give them. We weren't able to bring one down, and we had a truck full of supplies that we kind of dug through, and we couldn't find one there as well. So unfortunately, we weren't able to provide that. But what we were able to do is provide them with techniques of how to carry her a little bit better, positioning so that you can see her limbs are just kind of out of place. So ideas on how to position her limbs a little bit better so that she could grow a little bit better and be more comfortable in her life. We'll take a look at the next slide. So this was an exciting thing that we were able to do. Before we went down to Nicaragua, we were provided with a couple of hand prosthetics. And these are prosthetics that are all mechanical in nature, so they don't need things like electric that they need to be charged up or batteries in order to work. They're just mechanical, so you can use them anytime, any place. And we went down with 3 of these hand prosthetics. And so our goal was to be able to identify people that could use these and give them out. So while we were there, during the course of the week, there were 3 people that we saw that needed these prosthetics. And we just felt that it was such a perfect act of God in that we had 3 prosthetics to hand out, and there were 3 people that came to us in need for these. So we were able to give these out. So we were able to identify, like I said, 3 people, and this was really a team effort, because people down there, they're walking around with a missing limb, and they go to these clinics, and they don't expect to get a hand, so it's not something that they're seeking out. And so it's not like they come up to us, oh, I hear you have a prosthetic, can you give one to me? No, it's not something. So our whole team was aware of this, and they knew that we had a couple of these that we could give out, and so they were kind of our eyes and ears of looking around of like, as people come in through triage with nursing staff, oh, they're missing a hand, you need to go to PT. And so the whole team really got behind us with giving these out. One of the gentlemen who received a hand on the first day, he seemed to really like it, he was enjoying it. We saw him at clinic the following day, and he was wearing his hand. So it was just really great to see these hands be in use. And some of these people, all 3 of them actually had their amputation performed probably about 30 years ago. And so they've been living a long time with this. And a little bit of history in Nicaragua, about 20, 30 years ago, they had a civil war. And one of the gentlemen, I was asking, how did you lose your hand? He said, well, a bomb went off. And so he's been living with this for 20 or 30 years, and he's finally able to now have this hand to help him do some of the things that he needs to do throughout his life. So that was a really exciting part. We'll go to the next slide. So this was another gentleman that we saw walking around, and one of the most prominent things in this picture that you can see is that he's holding onto this stick. And he's holding onto the stick because if you look at his right leg is all bent up and out of position. And he can't walk on that right leg. That right leg is in this permanently bent position. And so he has figured out a way to move around throughout the day. And so he uses a stick, and he hops around on the stick in the one leg. And we were watching him move through the clinic, and it was amazing how he was moving. He was moving so fast, there were steps, he was flying up and down, he was doing great. So, we came down with all these walkers and canes, and we were looking at them, we're like, he doesn't need those, he's doing great with his stick, this is not an issue, you don't need to change it and make it worse for him. But he was having some shoulder issues because of the way that he was holding the stick, so we were able to treat him for the shoulder. One of the things that I love about this gentleman is that, he has so limited resources. He didn't have access to a walker or a cane or anything like that, but he found something that worked for him, and he was able to adapt and use what he had to make himself functional and mobile. So I love that aspect of the story. We'll look at the next slide. So, of course, this was, we were there for medical reasons and helping these people with their medical care, but like I said, this was also a Christian-based trip. And so after we worked with each of our patients, we got a chance to talk to them and find out what was going on in their lives, and find out if there was anything that we could pray for with them. And so you can see the picture on the left is my friend, and she's praying with some of the people that she worked with. And we would ask people like, look, what's going on in your life? Is there anything we can pray for with you? And some of them were like, very nicely, very politely declined, like, no, thank you, okay, fine. We offered up, not a big deal. Others would be like, yes, just some general things, I'm just pray for my health, or pray for my family, we could do so. Others really opened up to us and were sharing stories of, a sick child or someone who has been out of work for a while. And so we really got to pray for them and support them and show them, our love and God's love for them in, specific times of need. You can see the picture on the right is a picture of one of our girls who went down on the trip. I think she was like 12 or 13, and she was involved with a kids ministry there. So as we were doing all our medical care, some of our logistics people who went down ran a kids program, and they were in an upstairs room in the school, and it, kind of looked like a Sunday school program. And as we were doing our medical care in the clinic, we could hear the shouts and the screams and the singing from the kids program, and so they were really able to not only impact the lives of the parents, but also these kids, and share, Jesus with them. And so that was a really uplifting part of the program as well. Go to the next slide. So we went to a couple of churches in the town. Like a lot of small town USA, this town also had a church on every corner. Each church was a different denomination, but a lot of the times these churches didn't get along. Even though they had the same faith, just those slight differences, they just didn't work well together. So one of our main goals from the Christian missionary perspective, and one of the focuses of the pastors that came down with us, was to work with these churches and really help build connections between the churches so that they could then respect each other, learn about each other, and then work together to provide just a better faith community in the town itself. So there are 3 churches that we work with. We managed to go to service at 2 of those churches, and all the services that we went to, they were, even though they were at the one church, people from all 3 churches went to the one service. And that was really the first time that had happened in that town. So all of a sudden you have all these people worshiping together for the first time. And at each of these services, a representative would come up from each of the churches and share a little bit, either through, word or song. And it just helped foster bringing this town and this community together. Our kids program also at one of the services was able to put on a little presentation and song there, and the kids are very cute, and so we got to watch them as well. But it was great to see these churches come together for the first time. We'll go to the next slide. This is a picture of some of the pastors in Nicaragua of those 3 churches. And at the end, we all came together, surround those pastors and prayed for them. And the focus was really to encourage them to continue to work together as we would soon be leaving them. There is a person who works for our organization, GHO, who lives in Nicaragua, and he's the person who kind of facilitates all of these trips and helps coordinate the towns that we're going to and the churches. And another one of his roles is to follow up with some of these churches to make sure they are still working together and just be a support for them, so that even as we leave, we hope that they will continue to be working together to just build up that faith community in those towns. Go to the next slide. This was more of a grueling trip than some of the other trips that they do, because we did have so far to travel each day. It was 2 hours to get to the clinic and 2 hours back, and so it was a long day. So just as a team, we would often come together at meals and for worship and just to provide a support for each other. So that's what some of these pictures are showing. It's just some of us coming together and supporting each other through this trip. And I have to say, this team that we were on was just a fantastic team. It's a great mix of people who had been there before, kind of knew what they were doing, and new people who had never been before, and just brought this great excitement. And the team just meshed really well together, which made a huge difference. We'll go to the next slide. So a question that people often ask me after this, or after I share a little bit, is, what's next? Would you go again? And my answer is always yes. It was fantastic to see the impact that we had on these people there, both from a health, practical, medical standpoint, and also from a faith perspective. The responses we got back were phenomenal, and they were so hospitable, and you know, they have very little compared to what we have, but they were so welcoming and engaging and offering us food and drinks. You know, we were waiting outside one day and there's a coconut tree across the street and there's a family out there like chopping down the coconuts to share these coconuts with us. So like they're just so hospitable, and which was fantastic. So yes, I absolutely plan on doing more trips. I actually have a trip coming up in March. The plan is to go to a different country. I'll be going to Haiti with the same organization in March, so I'm excited for that. This last slide, I love to show this picture for my last picture because I just love the energy in this picture. This is a picture of one of the nurses that was on the trip and a little girl who was there, and you know, the little girl is checking the nurse's heart there, and I just love seeing the smiles in that picture and the joy that just comes out of their faces. You can see just the joy of the nurse, you know, who were of Kelly there, who was helping these people, and then just the joy of that child of having someone there and the interaction between them. And that's really what this trip is all about, and this mission work is being able to share your gifts and skills with these people who can benefit from them, and helping these people, and not only sharing those skills, but then sharing the love of God. And it shows in their faces of how grateful and happy and how meaningful it is to them. So again, I just want to thank you all because you did play a role in this. And you know, this is the work that you guys are doing, and it makes a huge difference. So thank you. And yeah, that's it.
Great job again, and I just thank you for sharing your experience with us, and that's what we need to hear in this spirit of Thanksgiving, to be so grateful and to be grateful enough to go and serve. Debbie will be sticking around for a little while afterward if you have any questions or want to see how you can get involved in missions and mission work, and I just love those stories and the experiences that you had and shared with us. And you all had a part in that by supporting missions. Isn't that great? Changing the world, changing lives. Huh? The pumpkin patch that so many people work helps to send people, so it's more than just pumpkins, huh? And we can find other creative ways to do that, but I think it's so important for us to hear those experiences and see faces, and yes.
Speaking of creative ways, we have an extra wheelchair here, so there's some people trying to figure out how can we get our extra wheelchair down to Nicaragua to give to that little girl.
They went to this community and they had 3 prosthetic arms, and God supplied 3 people that needed arms. Isn't that
Right hand.
Yeah.
pretty amazing? Yeah, that guy, in case there's any questions, if this is me working or not, just so you know, God is in it. So we hear this story about the girl who needs a wheelchair. This summer, a woman stopped by the church and asked if she could donate a wheelchair. She bought the wrong one and couldn't return it. Well, sure. So in its box still in the closet is a wheelchair in the back, and we have a wheelchair, and we're going to ask Debbie to take a look at them and see. I already have a couple people that are interested, but wouldn't it be great if we could find a way to get that wheelchair to that little girl? Huh? Do it. We'll do it, right? You'll hear more about it. Paul's going to get the information from Debbie and see how we can get that from McCownville United Methodist Church. Isn't that cool? So if God is moving your heart to get involved, to go on a mission trip, to support missions, ask Debbie, be involved with our mission team, and it makes a difference. I pray to God that we are all about missions and changing lives in this community and beyond in the world. Let's stand now, join our voices as we sing our closing hymn.